This video is presented in fulfillment of course requirements for the Doctorate of Management program at Colorado Technical University, ODC 872, current topics in organizational development. Sources are Coghlan et al.'s text, Organizational Change and Strategy, and Robbins and Judge's text, Organizational Behavior. Now, if I were to ask you, what is the first thing you think of when you hear the term, wait for it, organizational change? What comes to mind? To some people, and some organizations, those words are an exciting call to action, and they indicate an opportunity for growth and better performance. For others, the words send a shiver up their back, and all they see is risk and danger and people losing jobs. But regardless of how one feels about change, change is an inevitable part of life if a company is to maintain its competitive edge. There's an old saying in the military, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. There's another old saying that says, I have seen the enemy and it is us. Organizations are often their own worst enemy when it comes to change, but it doesn't have to be that way. I submit that change will be what one makes change. But in order to have a successful change, one needs a systematic process model to follow. Otherwise, how are you going to know where you're going and how are you going to know when you got there? One of the oldest change models, but one to which most new models can trace their development from, is Lewins' three-stage change model that he developed in the 1940s. Yeah, it's kind of old. Now, while there's many other change models, one can look at almost all of them and clearly see Lewins' original three steps found in his model. And you see them here on the slide. Lewins' three steps are unfreeze, change, and refreeze. All organizational development practitioners and change agents should have a very strong foundation in this model, if only for its clarity and its simplicity. This model identifies, kind of at a high level, the three basic things that have to occur in order for change to happen. In the first step, and you see this on the slide as well in the chart, unfreeze. This is where the organization recognizes the need for change. In his text, Robbins describes an organization as being in a status quo or an equilibrium state, kind of flatline. And it's from this state the organization has to recognize the status quo needs to change. Robbins describes this as happening by removing the restraining forces that desire to remain at equilibrium, those forces pushing down in the red arrows that you see, or the blue arrows that you see, and wanting the organization to stay in place or resist change. You also see the force of increasing the driving forces that directs behavior away from equilibrium or pushing up against the status quo. These people favor change, but it's best to use a combination of these two where you try to limit the forces wanting to remain at equilibrium and encourage the forces that want to move away from the equilibrium and are in favor of change. The second step here is movement. In this stage, the organization implements the change. This is the process the organization takes to move from the status quo into the changed state. Other models break this out into several steps to follow. For example, the continual improvement model found in the ITIL service management framework, which is a global best practices framework for IT service management, includes asking some questions like, where is the organization now? Identifying where the organization wants to be, identifying how to get there, then taking action, and then doing another assessment to compare to the baseline to see if you got to where you wanted to be, see if the change was successful. And then they have a further step of how do we keep the momentum going, which would apply to the refreeze. That's the third step of Lewins' model, refreeze. This is where the organization makes the change survive and establishes a new status quo. If an organization fails to refreeze, then it sets the stage for backsliding into that comfort zone of the old status quo, and all the efforts and resources put into the change are wasted, as the change will ultimately fail. This researcher selected Lewins' model because Lewins considered the father of change management, and in no small degree, his model is the basis from which most all other models were developed. It's simple, straightforward, easy to understand, and flexible enough for organizations to adapt and adopt it to meet their specific needs. Simplicity will help build support for the change. And remember, simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication.